Hi, happy Wisdom Wednesday. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I has come up again, in my life in the last few weeks in conversations with people I know. And I don't really know how it's come up, but just sort of randomly in conversation, I guess. I think we were probably talking about astrology. So I'm not actually going to talk about astrology per se today, um, but I do want to talk about this sort of ability I have, and I want to share some practices with you. It's I don't know if it's partly ability, but it's partly sort of like an inner awareness tool that I've turned on and tuned over the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years. So, what I want to talk about is this idea. I'm just going to turn off my music, sorry. This idea of tuning into monthly cyclic energy. And in conversation with a couple people I talked to this week, I had said that about, I don't know, maybe 10 days, sometimes 5 days, sometimes a day before we tune into the next month's energy. So by energy, I mean, I follow Western astrology. I don't know if all of you follow that, but that's one tool in my toolkit that has really helped me with my own self-care and my own ability to tune into what my body needs and what the collective is feeling at the moment. And so the elements that are associated with different signs is something that and the characteristics associated with each sign per month is something that has really helped me a lot to understand myself and understand what I need. So I had said that about 10 days before I can tune in to what that next energy is becoming. And I've had some pretty interesting reactions, and people say, wow, you can do that? And it's like, I guess it kind of sounds like it's a superpower, but really, like, as I've been talking about in these last videos, it's this idea of intuition turning on and tuning in and paying attention. And so there's maybe, I would say, about 6 key things that I wanted to talk about to maybe help you to learn how you can do this every month and tune into what your body needs. And it's pretty magical once we learn how to do this. So the first thing is the acknowledgement that we are cyclical beings in cyclical bodies surrounded by cycles. For example, the weather. The weather is constantly cycling in and out. The seasons we have 4 seasons, at least we do here in Canada, in North America. Some places you might have 2 major seasons, a dry season and a wet season. Your fall and your winter might look a little bit different, but regardless, we are cyclical beings as humans. And these cycles pass through us, but they're also around us. If you're someone with a womb and you do menstruate, you have a menstrual cycle. If you don't menstruate, but you have a womb, or don't have a physical womb, you would have an energetic womb that you can still tune into based on where the moon is at between its full and its new moon cycle. And so that's all energy, and that's what I'm going to talk about, how to tune into that energy. The moon and the sun are constantly cycling in and out of between that new moon and that full moon phase and all of their different phases in between. The sun, if you want to look at a cycle of your birth year, so we call it sometimes our solar return on our birthday. And so for 12 months, the sun is cycling around until it reaches back to the point where you were born. Planets move through different constellations every month, every day, every few days. I think it's every 2 to 3 days. A constellation is moving or a planet is moving through a different constellation, or the sun. I think it's the sun. See, I'm not an astrologer. I want to put a disclaimer out there. I'm like a student. I'm an enthusiast of astrology, but I am not an astrologer. These are just things that I am really, really passionate about and I like to pay attention to. So if we can acknowledge that as our first step, we are cyclical beings. That's a really good place to start if you want to tune into the cycles and know how they feel in you. Then I tune into subtle shifts, changes, signs that my body or my mind does without me even noticing. For example, I am wearing sort of like a crimson color top today, and I do this, I kid you not, almost every month during my menstrual cycle, which I'm on today, I'm on right now. I put on a red shirt, or I have a craving to wear crimsons and reds and deep pinks and things like that, deep purples. And I know that for me, that's my body and my spirit kind of taking over for me and doing it and tuning into what is presently happening in the shifts I'm moving through. And I find this very soothing, this color right now, whereas a week from now when I'm off my cycle, this might not be a color I find soothing. But it's kind of like I'm matching up that energy that I'm in right now to help me move through it more gracefully, with more awareness, paying attention to the fact that I'm cycling, paying attention to things that I need to learn from my menstruation, from the blood flowing out of me. So paying attention to those little signs. The next thing is the acknowledgement that all we need, everything that we need, is within us. All the energy, all the creativity, ideas, visions, awareness, our inner attunement, our judgment, and our discernment, and so on, exists within us and not outside of us. Seasons will simply teach you to go deeper within you and to ask yourself questions. So we don't necessarily need seasons to dictate how we live, but they act as excellent guides. The astrology, again, we don't want to define ourselves necessarily by our astrology, but it can be an excellent guide for going deeper within us to find the wisdom within us. And there we go again, back to what I've been talking about the last couple weeks, is this idea that healing is your gift. It's something that you have inside of you. It's not something that an external being or an external process will give to you. It's something that can be, you can guide, you can find within yourself. The next thing would be asking what seasons have to offer you, or cycles, or the astrological season has to offer you, and then ask what you can offer them. So, for example, a more fiery energy like Sagittarius, which we're in right now, so I'll use that example, and I am a Sag, could be asking for your attention to pay attention to the inner fire and the creative energy that exists in you. So yes, it's a fire sign, but what does fire mean if we talk about it as something within us? It could be creative energy, could be asking you to pay attention to the brightness and the lightness and the optimism that exists within you, and to seek those energies within you, or be with those energies within you. We don't even necessarily need to seek them, but even just by acknowledging that they're within us, they will show up automatically, immediately. So using these, I love using astrology, for example, because these signs have certain characteristics and elements. And what I always like to say to people, I'm someone who is a sun sign in Sagittarius, but I have many of my other planets. I have three other planets in Sagittarius. So I have a lot of fire in me, which means I have a lot of optimism, I have a lot of light, I have a lot of things I want to teach, and I'm a wisdom keeper, and I am very philosophical, but I also know that the energy of Sagittarius, as I've learned it within me, is like that of like a pack of running horses, running into a field and running towards, a gate, or running towards something. And so often I say to people, about 10 days before we move into Sagittarius, when we're still in Scorpio, I can feel that energy running through me, and it's not the same every year, but I felt it a few times in the last few years, of this feeling of okay, here we go. It's an expansion. It's a very quick energy. It's very determined. It's very goal oriented. It's fast. And I can feel these energies within me. I feel the shift in my emotional state. I notice it in what I want to pay attention to that I maybe wasn't paying attention to a few weeks ago. Whereas sign of Scorpio, if you learn about Scorpio, you learn it's a very deep, deep, deeply emotional sign. But Scorpio is also very good at like listening, deep intuition. They're very, very attuned to other people's energies. So that's something that you might start feeling a few days before something like Scorpio when you're still in Libra. Now, not to say that everybody feels it 10 days or 5 days before. You might not pay attention to or see it show up until the day the sun moves into that sign or a week into being in that season. It's all about what matters most is just that we pay attention to our own inner knowing. So it's an inner knowing. So you could start with Western astrology if that's what resonates with you and find out what each sign represents, which element exists there, which characteristics they're associated with, and then just pay attention to how your energy levels shift, your thoughts, your perceptions, your feelings, right before the next cycle begins. And as I said, it could be the day before the cycle begins, a week before the cycle begins. Depending on the sign, sometimes that energy really likes to show up, well in advance, like 2 weeks before. But generally, I would say a week to 10 days before, around that time, I start to feel the energy shift. You can also pay attention to things like, am I moving more? Am I more introverted? Am I crying more? Am I more desiring or of socializing more? Things like that is what I pay attention to see how my energy is shifting. Am I, with something like Aquarius? Aquarius is a very quirky sign. It's a sign that does really like astrology. It's very airy and tends to be an energy that really we might feel up here. So we might feel more pensive, we might feel more creative, we might feel more connected to the collective. So those are some things. If you start to just feel like, really connected to everyone around you and feeling very harmonized with that, you might be starting to feel into that energy of Aquarius. And then finally, I just say acknowledging that signs don't direct us. These astrological signs aren't, they act as guides, but we are the ones who are responsible for guiding our own inner wisdom, and we are our own, like I said last week, we're our own inner authority. And so this is just a little bit about how I tune into my own monthly cyclical and yearly cyclical energy, and this can even be done as we approach 2019. So starting to feel into, in the next few days, what energy is showing up for you, where are your thoughts focused on, what subtle energy shifts do you feel in your body, and it might take time because sometimes we don't like to actually pay attention to our body and the things that are shifting around, and that's okay. You could pay attention to what's happening outside of your body. You could pay attention to what's happening with other people around you, or what you feel, what you feel when you just notice the energy around your body, or the people around you, or things like that. I'm personally more comfortable paying attention to my own shifting in inner states, because that's something I've learned. And I wanted to give a shout out at the very end of this here, now that we're ending the video, to someone named Nicole Angela. And Nicole is a wonderful woman. She used to run, she is a healer, and she used to run women's circles that I went to. And she was the one who really introduced me to this idea, whether she knows it or not, but she introduced me to this idea of paying attention to the cycles and the shifting signs and what their characteristics are. And so each one of her monthly women's circles, she'd talk about the sign and she'd talk about some of the things coming up for her, and then all the women would by the end of the circle, we'd all realize we were all kind of tuning in the same way to the same energy shifts. And so the beautiful thing about being so tuned in to energy each month is that you're probably not the only one feeling this, because we're all connected, right? These signs are something that are represented for humanity, and when one person feels that creative, fiery energy that Sagittarius represents, likely many people are experiencing it, but in different ways based on their own lives and the way things are showing up and the patterns that are showing up in their life. So I hope that helps. And I hope that you make this a practice in your life, a sort of ritual in your life. It's a really beautiful way to live life, and to find some intention and some purpose in life, especially at this time of year. We're in winter and it's a bit darker. I know it's been more overcast, but I find that when I know that there's shifts going on, and I know that we're in a particular season, I like to tune in and say, okay, what is this season all about? What do I need to learn from it? What am I feeling in my body? And knowing that also nothing's permanent. So if it does feel like a heavier energy, I know, Scorpio is a pretty misunderstood sign. Got my Scorpio earrings on. But Scorpio is a pretty misunderstood sign. But it's also, it's a sign of deep listening and deep knowing, and very mystical and very beautiful. But know that nothing lasts. So if you are feeling heaviness and you're saying, well, all I feel is heaviness and that's just what I'm feeling for this month, it's impermanent, right? And everything shifts. Even if we feel like we're constantly in the same state all the time, we're looking at that same state from a different perspective, and that same pattern from a different perspective every time, even if we don't feel like we are. So that's my Wisdom Wednesday video. If you have any questions, let me know. I love sharing my practices with everyone, and I hope you have a beautiful day.